coin, the bit of the bargain, if you like, has to be that vaccine programme will be ramped up and accelerated. And that is a job and a half, because we've done about 1 million vaccines so far, got about 500,000 doses, but we need to get to 13 or 14 million in a matter of weeks. That is a huge national effort.
Well, they're talking, Sir Keir, of 13 million in 6 weeks. How confident are you that the way the government has prosecuted this war so far, that they're going to manage that feat?
Well, I think it's really tough, and they've, in the past, they've overpromised and underdelivered. That's been a major criticism of mine. But look, Nick, I want them to succeed, and therefore we will support them in this. I think the immediate things that need to happen are giving the NHS the support it needs to actually get to 2 million a week as fast as possible, and beyond that in early February, and then working with the manufacturers to make sure the doses are available. We probably need to go a bit further than that. We need to bring in volunteers. We need a vaccination centre on every high street. And I think we need, and the public need to see, politicians nationally and locally, whatever their party, pulling together to say, we will do whatever we can to make this work. Now, on the government's record, I've got my concerns, but actually I've got to put them on one side, and I've got to say, and I will say, we will support this and do whatever we can to make sure we're through this, because it's a race against time.
Yesterday morning, I had one of your senior colleagues, Kate Green, on the show, who said that where schools had been open, they should be staying open. Obviously, I would imagine that's changed now. Are you and your colleague on the same page here?
Yeah, we are. And look, Nick, I really wanted those schools that were going to open yesterday to stay open, because amongst my concerns about the pandemic have been the impact it has on vulnerable and disadvantaged kids.
I'm reminded of conversations we've had. You've always been an advocate for keeping schools open because of there's a sort of social and emotional cost for some kiddies as well.
There really is, and there's the ability of kids to learn online, particularly if they don't have devices. They're in overcrowded accommodation. They're having to pay for data in some cases they can't afford. So there's that element. I'm also acutely conscious that some children are very vulnerable when they're out of school. School is, for some children, tragically, the safest place for them. So I've always said school should be the last resort. And the argument we were making the last couple of days is that certainly until a national lockdown, having some areas where retail is open but then closing schools just seemed to me the wrong way of approaching this. Now, inevitably, they are going to close. Lots of staff and teachers have spent a lot of the last few days and weeks trying to get those schools safe, and they will be frustrated and in some cases angry. But we are in the situation now where there are national restrictions and schools are closed down. And that then raises immediate challenges. Get those devices to children, have the discussion with the providers, because the data charges are really prohibitive, and it's the poorer families that struggle with that. I think the government needs to challenge the data providers to say, make it free straight away. Gavin Williamson promised loads of devices over the summer. They didn't arrive. And then we've got to address the question of exams, because there's no pretending exams can take place in the ordinary way.
But what if a child doesn't have broadband, Sir Keir? Are you suggesting the government would actually fund the provision of broadband to a child?
Well, it may. We'll have to find a way around that situation.
These are fortunes you're spending now, aren't they?
Well, look, Nick, the reality
broadband
is...
to every home, gosh.
No, I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need to find a way of providing a service to those children that don't have it.
Well, how else
that is
would
not
it
saying,
be?
but it's not the same broadband to all houses. But just bear me out, because the Prime Minister said last night 7 weeks of this lockdown. This morning, the government is broadly saying we're probably in this till March. And that is a long time for children to be out of school. Now, if there are some children without broadband, that we have to find a facility. That isn't to say get broadband to every house. Of course it's not. But it is saying we've got to have a support package in place. Otherwise, what are we going to do with these children? Say that for 8 weeks or 10 weeks, they're not going to be able to learn. That we already know that the attainment gap it was too big in the first place. It got bigger last year because of the problems. We cannot just sit idly by and accept that is going to be inevitable.
Lastly and briefly, a word on what appears to have been the mothballing of the Nightingale hospitals, and we're now hearing that is to be reviewed, and possibly the one in London could now be effectively reopened.
Yeah, look, I mean, what's gone on with the Nightingale hospitals is not sensible, but the staffing is the real problem. Nick, my wife works in a hospital. They've been desperately asking for staff to come in over the last few days because they can't get the staff into the hospitals that they need. So, of course, the Nightingales need to be reopened. But the bigger problem, if you like, is have we got the staff to go into those hospitals? Because what I know for a fact is that London hospitals and the hospitals across the country are struggling. They're asking staff to come in off leave, etc. All hands to the deck, and that's the spirit of the NHS. But that's the real nub of the problem here.
Grateful for your time, Sir Keir. Thank you. Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party. Look forward to seeing you, of course, on Monday when you'll be here taking calls on LBC. That's Call Keir on Monday here on LBC. The time right now, 8:53.
This is LBC.
We all like
Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
You can always trust